Welcome everyone to the Frosty Canucks podcast. I'm your host, Jason, along with Frosty.
Hello.
It's time for drinking.
I was gonna say, are you gonna leave the part where you cracked open that brewski in the final cut?
Yes. All right. It's launch day for the PS5 when we're recording, and I still shit out of luck. So I'm gonna drink my problems away. Does that sound like a good plan?
Sounds like I don't know. That's as good a plan as any, I would say.
Fair enough. Because the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and the Series S all launched roughly this week. We're gonna briefly talk about it, and I have some serious opinions about PS5's motto being "Play has no limits." Bullshit, doesn't have limits. I can't get the damn thing, so there's that.
That sounds like a limitation if I ever heard one.
Yeah.
So I saw you. We were talking about this briefly before we started recording, but I saw you raging about not being able to get
it wasn't
an order
raging.
put through. No, that was some salty shit on Twitter. But yeah, I guess you were not able to. Still, hold on? Are you gonna keep complaining about this until you eventually get one?
No. Yes.
Okay, that's what I figured. And you can make fun of me for doing the same thing with computer parts. I don't do that with computer parts. I buy parts like after they're not in vogue anymore.
No, I'll wait it out. I'm not gonna buy from scammers who are like today they increased the prices even though there's technically more of a surplus now. It's like $2,000. It's ridiculous.
I mean, scalpers are going to do that if they have the opportunity to, and the lack of availability of these products is going to afford them the ability to do that.
Yeah, it's brutal. My second point about it has no limits. So there's only on the PS5 at least there's only 667 gigabytes of free storage with that SSD, and like games like I think this was like the big one was like the new Call of Duty is like 130 gigabytes. So great, I can put like maybe 5 games on my PS5 before I don't have space.
That's interesting. So that would be a terabyte drive. A portion of the drive would be lost to like pointer allocation, so the software knows where everything is on the hardware. Sorry, you said 600 and what?
667.
Oh my god. Okay, so they're using like over 200 gigabytes probably on the system for the operating system and a bunch of software that you don't care about.
Yep.
That's actually quite a large amount of software to be included on a device.
Yeah, so I mean, it does come with basically a tech demo called Astro's Playroom, which is basically just to show off any of the new features. And
okay, so that's definitely going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, a little bit of will be probably that. I don't know if you can maybe delete that afterwards and just re-download it. It's basically a tech demo for the new controller because the new controller has like the haptic feedback and all that fun stuff and the adaptive triggers.
I'm going to be honest. I think those features are horseshit.
Why is that?
I already don't like controllers, first off. So, like, just keep that in mind as a piece of context. But, like, the idea of making the controller harder to push down, it just sounds irritating to me. I want to press the button and have it do the thing. I don't want to fight with the controller. I just want to press the button and have it do the thing. I don't want to have to fight with the controller. That's not a thing that I view as being valuable at all. I get that it's like, oh, well, you could have it be like, you know, that scene where like Lara's climbing out of the dirt mine in the first Tomb Raider, or the first rebooted Tomb Raider anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You could have it so like, oh, she's having like a tough time. She's like struggling to get out, and then you can be struggling with the controller. So there's like an extra layer of immersion or some shit. I don't know what you would call that.
It's immersion. Yeah.
But for me, it'd be like that's just irritating because I'm just looking at it. I'm like, well, this is just a dumb like interactive cutscene. I don't care. I don't feel anything watching this. This is actually more annoying than if I was just watching the cutscene.
You know, definitely the IGN definitely in their review of Spider-Man Miles Morales, like probably like the haptic feedback made me really feel
like Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. With the adaptive triggers and with the web swinging.
Yeah. Now, luckily,
there is some of that actually.
Oh my god. Now, luckily, you can disable it. I think I don't know if you can do it on a system-wide basis, but I know you can do it on like a game-by-game basis. So that's something at least you have the ability to just turn that shit off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a feature that I don't see any inherent value in at all.
Well, it's like when the 4 had the touchpad. Like mostly their exclusives actually utilized it, like basically rub the touchpad this way, and like it'll have like this command or like this, like you'll get this power, and then other things like that.
I always felt like the touchpad on the DualShock 4 was also like a piece of shit.
Well, yeah, it was just another feature like that they tried.
Yeah, well, so like I'm not opposed to like having touch pads on controllers because I like the Wii U controller. It's a little bit bulky, but
Hmm.
I like the idea of having the touch screen there because that made inventory management really, really simple in the games that actually utilize it as an inventory screen. And I know it's like not like it's not as good of a use case as the DS, which had like a ton of weird games to actually utilize the touchscreen really well.
Yeah, like Trine Odyssey was a great game because you'd have the bottom one as like this little map drawing thing. So like
Hmm.
you'd be able to put like what, oh, traps are here and like walls are here. I love that game. That was. I hope they do one for the Nintendo Switch. I haven't seen any news about it though.
I think the last Etrian Odyssey that it was on the 3DS.
Well, yeah, it was on the 3DS. I'm just hoping they kind of do something with the. I guess it'd be harder because it's not got
Yeah, I
the
don't
two
know.
screens anymore.
Was that a series that was born on the DS era of
Yes,
Nintendo?
it was on the Nintendo DS to start.
Yeah, so I don't know if it would be able to survive without the dual screen. There's like a ton of series that and like intellectual property that was created throughout the DS, 3DS era of Nintendo handhelds that cannot survive without the second screen because they actually used the second screen to great effect. I don't know. I never played the World. Oh boy.
Oh, the world ends with you.
Yeah, thank you. I never played that. I know you have. Does that still work on the Switch without the bottom screen?
I have not played it, so I cannot comment on that, and I've not really seen any videos. So, but I mean, they
Okay.
did port it. So
Yeah, I just don't know if it's as effective without the touchscreen. I know some games are fine without it. I liked with Metroid where you just like poked things to shoot them because I'm like, oh, this is like way less shit than. So Metroid Prime fans, sorry, you're wrong. Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2 are not great games entirely because they play more like The Legend of Zelda than they do, at least combat wise, than Metroid. You have to lock onto everything in order to shoot it because there's just no the way they do first person shooting on the GameCube is just it sucks. I liked the when they remapped everything with the Wii mote and re-released it on the Wii because then you could actually like control the game like it was a first person shooter. It wasn't like a quick based first person shooter, mind you, but at least you had the ability to control things. So I really
Mhm.
liked when they did like the DS because it's like, oh, you just poke things and then you shoot them. And then there's a bunch of other things that just in general, even just putting like a menu or an inventory on the touchscreen, I always thought was like a good enough use of it. It's not the most inventive thing, but it means that you don't have to open up a whole other menu to get at your inventory, which I always thought was like really, really nice. I hate having to bury through like, or dig through menus for shit. It's probably part of why I don't like a lot of RPGs.
Yeah, you'd hate a Mass Effect Andromeda. It had the most bizarre UI for like managing like, oh, your basically your recipes or your like blueprints and your missions. It was really weird. I don't even think it was optimized for PC. It was just bizarre.
Yeah, I think that the other like the weirder thing is that I only started getting like really, really, really pissed off with bad UI and user experience design after I started working in technology and having to be like exposed to that sort of stuff more often with customer facing stuff. So it's like if the user has like a bad experience with your application, they're not as likely to come back and use it again. So it's very important to make sure that everything's optimized around as few actions as possible to get to the desired result. So when you're playing games and they have like really clunky menus, I find it sticks out like a sore thumb to me because I have to like I constantly have to keep that sort of stuff in mind either when I was directly designing interfaces and I don't have to do that anymore, but like when you're looking at and testing things, it's like, oh hey, this action could be like reduced by one. You should like that needs to be fixed in the UI. So then you like submit a ticket to the UI team and tell them that they need to optimize a certain feature or they should look into maybe trying to optimize a certain feature. We started with the PlayStation 4 or 5 and
Yeah.
Xbox One X. Wait, no,
Yeah.
Series X.
Yeah. Series X.
Okay. And I'm not going to acknowledge, I know the Series S exists, but that's more words than I want to say. So we're just going to say the Series X and the PlayStation 5 for those people who may or may not get angry at us for not mentioning the Series S. We're just pretend that they're the same thing.
But which they're not, but yeah, it's fine.
Just fucking pretend that they're the same thing. They both have ray tracing. They both have a solid state drive. Just pretend they're the same thing.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, they launched with a lot of games that are backwards compatible. PS5 and PS4 games, like there's a plan for about 3 or so years. The games are still going to come out for the PS4 and they're going to be cross-gen. I'm sure
Yeah,
that
I saw that as well. I think that this generation, so like I thought last generation was very PC like. I thought both of the consoles were fundamentally just living room PCs, and I feel like with this generation, the idea that it is just a bunch of living room PCs, I feel like that's more validity to that statement because they're even supporting like the previous hardware, which isn't really that different than the new hardware from an internal how you make software kind of way. I know it's more powerful, but how do I explain this? There's the bits and bops inside of it are not super different than what was in there before. They didn't fundamentally change how you have to do things like they've done in previous console generations.
right. I mean, it's mostly the SSD and the increase in like power.
It's more powerful and it can load things faster is like the big
Hmm.
kind of change instead of it being like, oh, we changed we changed the architecture and we changed how you do memory management and we changed how you fucking like load shaders into the GPU. It's like none of that shit changed. It's just like
Well,
it's more powerful.
that's what they did with the PS3, which was it's like
Oh god, the cell processor was such a disaster. No one knew how to use it. It was super powerful, but
hmm
no one knew how to use it. It was too complicated to code around. Most people who make games are not that. They're not software engineers. Like they're game devs. You don't have to be a software engineer to be a game dev.
they must have been so happy when they all like switched over to PS4 and were like, "We're dropping the PS3 version of Assassin's Creed." Oh, thank fucking god!
Yeah, so you don't have to. You just do x86 architecture. It's the same shit you develop for with PC, which just it means that all the technology you've already developed on PC is going to work over here. Woohoo! I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but like that substantially reduces the amount of like extra testing and extra work and extra development that the engineers actually have to do if they're making custom game engines. And then if you just don't even know how to make a game engine and you just use the third party stuff like Unreal or Unity, yeah, if you're going with those, then it's like, okay, well, you know that Epic and Unity, I don't actually know what the fuck Unity's developer company's called. I think they might just be Unity.
I think so. Yeah.
They have less like different hardware configs to test things on because it's just like, okay, it's built for this type of architecture.
Which though the counterpoint to that is like now that there's so many versions of because there's the PS4, the PS4 Pro, the Xbox One, the Xbox One S, the Xbox One X, and then like the 4 different versions that they've got for, or really I guess it's 3 because the console and the digital version of the PS5 is the same. There's a lot of different versions that they actually have to still test on to make sure that the games work upon release. Kind of crazy.
Yes, but also they're not. It's not like they have to do a bunch of extra development work to make sure that that happens.
True. Yeah.
Where it's like if if you've got one version coming out on like if you had like the Xbox 360 versus the Xbox One, you were testing on x86 and PowerPC. So that's like two fundamentally completely different architectures under the hood of things, which substantially changes a lot of the code at a low level. I'm talking about a bunch of shit that like no one at all is going to understand, or at least mostly because I don't understand it well enough to explain it in a way that actually makes sense. Because this is stuff that's even like beyond the scope of what I end up doing. Because I don't ever code that low level either. So it's not like me insulting game devs by saying, oh, they don't do like they can't do this. It's like almost nobody does because it's hard.
Yeah. Well, remember when like games were they were like so much smaller, but now they don't even like bother with like compressing the file sizes anymore. Like
It's because you don't have to. Space isn't a premium.
it's just weird how it's kind of changed in that regard.
Yeah, I guess kind of an unfortunate knock-on effect of that is the download sizes have gone through the fucking roof, which is shitty if you have bullshit internet. And if you're in North America listening to this, there's a good chance you have bullshit internet.
Or yeah, just the limited space. Like I can't imagine having to download 130 gigabytes for Call of Duty on
Yeah, well,
on
you
my
just
shitty
download
internet.
it and you uninstall when the next one comes out.
I meant like how long it would take.
Oh, that would take my
I
internet like 6 or 7 hours to download.
feel like it would take like twice as long.
Yeah, mine usually downloads like I think around 50 gig. I think it can do in about 2 to 3 hours. Something like 6 or 7 would be 100.
I just do it while I'm asleep. If I download something new,
Yeah, that's a smart way to
makes
do
the most.
things.
If you got shit internet, you gotta let it. You may as well pass the time sleeping.
It would suck most of all for people who have like borderline dial-up internet. Like when I was at my parents' house way back when, they had 5 megabits per second, I believe was the speed, and it took over 25 hours to download like 25 gigs.
At least you had a reasonable amount of gigabytes. I had to convince my parents to go up to 80 gigabytes as the monthly limit.
Oh yeah, we had unlimited, which is good because when my
Lucky you.
parents, well, I guess not my parents, my dad and my sisters discovered Netflix. Oh my good lord. They were blaming, mom looked at like the data usage. She's like, well, it's a good thing we have unlimited because like over 200 gigabytes a month, you should probably stop playing video games. And I'm like, can you go back like 6 months? She's like, why? I'm like, well, that's when before we had Netflix. She's like, okay. She goes back 6 months and the data usage was like 50 gigs. I'm like, that is me. 200 shit, that is Netflix. That is your husband's and your daughter's. You can sod off. This is not my fault.
That's pretty funny.
And 200 gigabytes was just like Netflix coming through at like bullshit resolutions too. So it wasn't even coming through at like 1080p.
Oh, like the 720?
I don't even think it was 720 sometimes. Well, it's like there's only so much bandwidth, right? So it can't put
Yep.
like it can't put the big Chungus packets through that and have them come through contiguously and reliably. So yeah, it's a good thing that I still don't think my parents have a 4K TV, but it's not like they get any benefit out of it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, but my 4K for the PS4 Pro.
Yeah, well that actually kind of makes sense though.
Yeah, it was actually a cheap one. I got it for like $400.
Yeah, 4K TVs, I want to say
They're reasonable now.
2 or 3 years ago, they hit like under $1,000 for like a 50-inch display, which is like a reasonable price for a consumer to pay for them. And they've only continued to drop since then.
Yeah, it'll be whatever's next 8K and then whatever's after that.
Oh my God, I don't. Okay, oh God, the video game people can't even keep up with 4K. They still can't do 4K native 4K in a lot of games. I don't know if that'll change with this generation, but like the previous generation, the 4K was not. It was not real 4K. It was.
Yeah, it was upscale or.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the tech behind it is, but they used like a software algorithm to predict what it should look like, so they didn't have to actually process every single pixel, and I just kind of guessed it.
Yeah, I think it'll help with those SSDs to at least potentially get there until.
Yeah, well, it can load things faster, right? So the
exactly.
massive ass textures that are that's so. Spoiler alert for those who don't know. The reason why games are so big now is because of the 4K textures. If you look at the file sizes of video games in any kind of intimate degree, which is very easy to do on PC, mind you, the biggest waste of space is always cutscenes that are not in-engine cutscenes. We should have in-engine cutscenes now. They look great. We don't need to have full motion video that's pumped out at 4K. That shit takes up an enormous amount of space. And I don't think it looks that much better than in-engine stuff. And then the next biggest thing is usually music if it's not compressed properly.
Mm-hmm.
If it's compressed properly, it's not a big deal. If it's not compressed properly, oh Lord Jesus Christ, it's going to be huge. And then the next big thing after that is the textures. So,
do you consider like the music as the voice lines as well?
oh yeah, everything that's everything that's like an MP4 or a FLAC file or whatever is going to come. And that's another thing. Depending on the type of recording they include it in, that dramatically changes the size, right? Because like MP3 files sound like dog shit. But then, like other formats, I usually listen to FLAC. I don't even think FLAC is the new hotness anymore. I'm pretty sure there's other stuff that's better. But like FLAC files are like way better sounding audio. We went completely off the rails here.
That's perfectly fine. Did you know that Xbox Series X has, other than the backwards compatible exclusives, has no new exclusives for this release because of Halo Infinite getting pushed to oblivion?
I mean, that just sort of falls into what I was saying before about
you don't need this, yeah.
Yeah, you don't need a new console, right? You can get away with playing the old all the games on the old ones. I would imagine still perfectly fine. I don't know if the games include graphical options. They probably should have some kind of like preset things so you can play them properly on the old hardware. A buddy of mine was complaining that Like a Dragon was running at like 23 FPS on his old Xbox One. I don't know if I believe that because I think it might have just been running at 30, but he might just be full of shit because he got used to looking at things at 60. I don't know if you listen to the podcast, Charlie, but I don't think you know what you're talking about. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, he really wants the new console because he's convinced that he needs it, which I think a lot of people they have the consumerist mindset where they're, I need to have the new thing. Well, actually, you want the new thing. You don't need the new thing. You just want it. So
yeah, I'm in a position of I'd like it if I can get it, like if it's
yeah.
available. But if I don't get it, I wasn't that upset about it. I was just memeing.
I don't ever get really upset about not being able to get things, but like I never try and get things when they're new, right? Like I got an RTX GPU, so 2060, like well after the launch of those cards, like over a year after. And then I bought my Ryzen CPU, I think just before the second generation of, so it's a first generation Ryzen CPU, and I bought them just before the second generation came out. And some people would be like, but you didn't get like the latest and greatest tech. And it's like, yeah, well, I was able to buy the tech that I have without like having to fucking get angry about scalpers and like spend hours sifting through websites. I just like walked into Canada Computer and was like, hey, I want this part. And they're like, here you go, which is something I like value that convenience a lot more over having the latest and greatest, especially when the stuff I have works like perfectly fine and it has continued to work perfectly fine for everything that I've been playing. I do think that with the new generation having solid state memory finally for their non-volatile memory, I'm going to need to upgrade to actually have my games load off of a solid state drive. Because right now I'm just using a 7.2K RPM hard drive, which is fine for like indie games and stuff because there's almost nothing to load. But on a few bigger games, it's like, I got to wait like 10 seconds for stuff to load. But if the new games are being designed around, like solid state memory, I think I might actually need to have solid state memory available for them. Otherwise, they'll take a fucking year to load.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So, and like when
I
was just gonna say, when I built my machine, solid state was at a premium. It was like, so my OS loads off of a solid state drive. I had a 128 gigabyte solid state drive, and I still do, and that just has my operating system on it. And at the time, that cost over $100 to buy. So it was almost like $1 Canadian for a gigabyte of storage, which is not a great deal. And now you can buy I think you can buy 500 gigabyte solid state drives for under $100 now Canadian, and you can buy like over a terabyte for a very affordable price, which is the only reason consoles are using the solid state memory now. But yeah, solid state memory it just over like over the last 5 years, it's like substantially reduced its pricing to a point where it's went from being like just like a premium thing to being a super duper affordable. Like there's no reason to not have solid state memory in any kind of like any device you're making, a console, a computer, whatever.
Cool. I did not know that. Or the history on that. Yeah, I mean, I think when I bought a 2 terabyte hard drive, I think it was like $70. It was pretty damn cheap.
Yeah. It's I think hard drive memory is the one thing that I constantly changes price over time because the I don't know what it is about it, but like this, either the availability of the components or the kind of process for making them becomes more efficient and less costly, or they just find like general engineering improvements, or maybe a combination of all three of those things over the course of several years, and it substantially reduces the price to produce these pieces of hardware, which is great. So
because they typically pass that on to us to get
absolutely
more PS5, more Xbox Series X sales, which I mean it's already a pretty damn high price point. I think I was looking at like because I was gonna get the disc one. I think it was like $700 with tax. I was like, geez, this is pricey.
That is a very expensive console, I guess.
Yep, but I did not get through. Best Buy did not work out. Oh well.
Yeah, I don't know. You'll get one eventually.
Yeah,
I don't know how many episodes I'm going to end up saying that shit on, but you'll get one eventually.
It depends if I don't bring it up next time, which I probably.
You probably will.
I'm not promising anything. Never mind. Did we want to move on to the user question?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Maz submitted another question, and he just said I didn't have to read the whole context for it, but I want to. Well, not the whole. This is like an abridged version, but so I'll ask the question and then I'll present the context for said question. So it's a two-parter. The first part is, how much do you think soundtracks factor into how individual players receive the game that they're playing, both consciously and unconsciously? And then the second part is, what soundtracks stand out to you for better and for worse? And the context for that was while playing, I think he's playing Persona 5 Royale or Royal. And there's a scene in that where, what the hell is it called? That song's called "Throw Away Your Mask," and the idea, it's like an instrumental version of the song of a song, and then it switches over to "Keep Your Faith," which is a version that has vocals. on top of the instrumentation. So it starts off with like the instrumental version as you're kind of climbing your way to, I think, the final boss or the main villain of the story. And then when you get to him, it switches over to the version with lyrics. And that ends up creating a very powerful, very poignant moment that ties together kind of the themes of what's going on at that time in the story and leads to it being like a very satisfying crescendo. That same situation would not arise were the music not so perfectly in sync with what's happening from both the thematic and from what's on the screen kind of standpoint. So I kind of, he wrote out like an entire fucking paragraph. I kind of summarized it there. But yeah, so fundamentally the question is, oh, I guess, and he really liked how that worked together and thought it wouldn't work as well together. So then that's where he came up with the two questions. How much do we think that soundtracks factor into how players receive a game, both their conscious understanding and being like, oh yeah, I really like the soundtrack in this, or like their unconscious, like when they just listen to a game and they're like, oh, this is really satisfying, but they don't necessarily recognize the music, even if it's a huge part of why it's so satisfying. And then the second part is just like what soundtracks we have enjoyed or not enjoyed. I have a very large list of bullet points, but since I just talked through that entire thing, do you want to start?
Sure. Short answer is yes. It definitely has a huge impact on whether it's the replayability of a game or just simply like if the style of the game needs like really good soundtracks. Like for example, I'll give like one which is like Cuphead. Cuphead music is just super fantastic in that game.
Yes,
And
it is.
I'm someone who's not even played it. Like I just listened to the soundtrack. That was it, and a little bit of some gameplay. But it's a fantastic soundtrack because it's so good. That is what, like, I can see that's what like is allowing people to come back to the levels over and over again. If they were repetitive or really like mediocre, I don't think there really is much success other than simply being the art style, and was also like added a lot to it.
I'm in the same kind of boat. I actually have played Cuphead, and I think the music is a very big factor in why that game is successful. Consciously and unconsciously, I think it has a huge fact, like music in general has a huge factor on how players enjoy games. A lot of the time, I would say some of the most successful games out there are the ones that have really good music. I don't know if people always recognize that, because in some cases the music's just really good at being thematically appropriate and really helping to punctuate different moments that happen within like a cutscene or some kind of pivotal story moment. And I think a lot of the biggest games out there, like the ones that people have a lot of respect for and that have enjoyed a lot of success critically and commercially over the years, have done so because of their music. One of the examples I have written down is Nintendo games. I think that a lot of the big franchises Nintendo has, I mean like the really big ones, I'm talking about Mario, I'm talking about Animal Crossing, I'm talking about kind of Pokemon, I'm talking about Legend of Zelda. These are games that are extremely successful, partially on the back of their music being excellent. Mario and Zelda in particular are always given really good soundtracks, or at least in their like big main console releases. I think that's a huge factor in why those games are so successful. I'm not saying that like the games aren't satisfying to play, but I think that having really, 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 really good soundtracks are a big part of what propels people to enjoy them so much.
Is it because the soundtracks are like very iconic? Like you can tell, like that's a Zelda one, that's a Mario soundtrack, like
I
without even
think,
knowing playing the game.
yeah, I think that might have might be a key factor. I hadn't thought about that when I was making my notes, but I think that might be a key factor in why they're so good. One of the things I feel like, especially Mario, I play and enjoy Mario, I think more than Zelda games. But one of the big things I like with Mario is that the music is always so consistently good at capturing a theme in a level. They'll have in levels that are really like bright and like bouncy and colorful. They'll have these theme tunes that mirror that. They're very bright. They're very bouncy. They're very colorful melodies. They're catchy. They put a little bit of a skip in your step, that kind of stuff. And then there'll be levels that are they'll be darker. They're more, like water levels. They have a little bit more of a melancholy vibe to them. And the music reflects that. And I think that the music in those levels is like, it's dialed back. It's very calm. It's a little bit melancholy. And I think that those melodies end up being really beautiful to listen to. I actually like those usually a lot better than the more upbeat stuff in Mario. And I wouldn't necessarily say that all of them are iconic, but certainly I think that like how iconic some of the music is in some of those games is certainly a factor. I want to say biggest factors about why Smash Brothers is so successful is because of all of the iconography from other Nintendo games. Smash Brothers could be
Mm.
Mario Party, and as long as it had like it still had a roster of characters from other Nintendo franchises, I think it would still be like really well received. But a big part of what makes Smash Brothers so great is that you can listen to it's basically got a giant catalog of all of the best music from Nintendo, right? Like with the different stages for different characters, and they represent different games, and then they have like some of the best soundtracks from those games as part of the music for that stage. So it's like Smash Brothers is secretly a giant CD of Nintendo music. That's great. And I think that might be part of why people love it, because they get to hear the sounds and see the sights of the games they love with the characters they love all at the same time. I don't think the games would be as good as they are if it weren't for the fact that they have all of that really like all that music from the different games, or like all that iconic music from different games that Nintendo puts out.
Yeah, the nostalgia from like playing the levels and like listening to the Donkey Kong music or the Mario levels. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely adds another like level and immersion.
And in general, I feel like a lot of big budget games that are like not Nintendo, because Nintendo, I always feel like Nintendo does music really, really well because they actually care about music. But there are some big budget games that where the story can be written like complete dog shit. And I mean like actual complete dog shit. But the music will be so poignant and so well suited for the scene that even if the scene is written like complete garbage, they'll feel the mood that they're supposed to because the music helps them to feel the mood. The music's doing way more. I feel like in most modern AAA games, the music does more work to tell the story than the actual writing does. And people can get pissed off at me for saying that, but I'm 100% convinced that is true.
Yeah, no, Destiny is like a good example of that. Like it's got a nothing story. Like what the hell? But
The music is
the
fantastic. The
music is
music tells you how you're
fantastic.
supposed to feel it every time, every like
Yeah,
moment in the story.
exactly. But you don't even need. You could have them all the characters muted, and you get the same story probably.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of big budget, like I think that the Rockstar games are also really notable for that. I haven't played a whole lot of them, but whenever I like watch people play them or whenever people talk about them, they always mention the music being really, really good in those games. And I know they have a huge library of licensed soundtracks for the games. Like even Donkey's video on Red Dead Redemption 2, where he like talks about how the opening is just like so like the music in it is so well suited for what's happening on the screen. I feel like they get a lot of those kind of moments correct in as far as their storytelling, even if their stories are largely derivative and they're mostly just ripping off movies that are really successful and better written. Don't at me.
Well, I brought up the iconic part because, like, if you think about like games like Final Fantasy.
Oh yeah, Final Fantasy's got a ton of iconic music too.
Right, so a ton of iconic music. I'd say lesser with Dragon Quest. However, good point about Dragon Quest is because of how they don't deviate from what kind of music it is. You can always kind of tell it's a Dragon Quest like soundtrack because they do very orchestral music instead. Like they don't like go to like pop or like country or anything weird like that. So you can always kind of know like without even just listening to it, it's maybe a Dragon Quest soundtrack.
I don't know. I feel like Japanese games. I give Japanese games a lot of shit because they deserve to be given a lot of shit. But I feel like Japanese games get music right a lot of the time, or at least a lot of the ones that I'm thinking of right now get music right a lot of the times.
That might make sense with your stance on Nintendo then, yeah.
Yeah, like Nintendo does pretty. I think Nintendo does a pretty good job. Square Enix does a pretty good job. Sega does a pretty good job. I have another point for Sega, but that's for part two.
I have a feeling it's the mine as well, but yeah, let's save that.
Yeah, I think like Capcom usually does a pretty good job as well.
Yeah. One point I did want to make was one of my kind of I'd say definitely one of my more preferred our top series would be The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. But all the soundtracks are really good throughout the four games that the story is told through. But when I was re-listening to them kind of to refresh my memory, I noticed with the soundtracks for over like the 4 games for the openings, you could tell that there was like a shift in the music's tone as well as the games. So you went kind of from lighthearted because at the beginning, like you enroll in this military school and you're kind of dealing with like small problems but nothing serious, and then basically war escalates throughout the games. So over time, like the songs become much more serious with like still some lighter moments in the games, but like the openings overall were like kind of went from lighthearted to more serious over time. It's kind of
So the
interesting to see
music
that.
reflects the tone of the story.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any kind of specific examples to go along with that. So it seems like in general, we think that it has a huge factor on people consciously and unconsciously enjoying it. Where I
Yes.
made the really bold statement, I'm going to repeat it. I think that most people only think AAA games have good stories because the music raises those stories to be much better than they actually are. Again, don't at me. I don't care. So then moving on to part 2. Is there, and I'm sure that we can, I have examples of good and bad here, but is there games that what specifically did he say here? What soundtracks stand out to you for better and for worse? So what soundtracks do we like, and do we think that made the games they were in a lot better, and which soundtracks do we think are dog shit terrible and made games actively worse?
Now let's see. Let's start with the worst.
Okay.
On 3. 1, 2, 3. Sonic.
Yeah, I was going to say
Damn
Sonic
it!
as well.
I
I
knew it.
didn't. Yeah, so I have Sonic written down here. So I fucking love Sonic music. It's so cheesy. It's so 80s hair metal rock. It is like the most butt rock stuff ever. I love it. I even like the stupid Knuckles raps. I was listening to one of them earlier, the Knuckles theme song from Sonic Adventure, which is hilarious. It's like rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather. They call me Knuckles. Unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my muscles. Like, who the fuck wrote these lyrics? That is the dumbest shit I have ever heard, but it's great. I love it. I love that shit. But god damn, I want to punch whoever is responsible for sound mixing in the throat. Every single Sonic game that comes out, I swear to Christ, they make the music and the sound effects equally loud. Do you know how hard it is to hear all of the good work they put into the soundtrack being just a total cheeseball butt rock festival? You can't hear anything because every time you collect a ring, it plays a fucking sound effect that's as loud as the music. It's mind-boggling how bad it is. So that's like an instance where the soundtrack is really good, but the sound mixing is so shit. Like, it makes the game worse. I feel like that the sound mixing in Sonic games makes the games worse. In newer ones, you have the ability to tweak the sound effects so you can actually lower the volume. If you put them at half or less, usually you can still hear them, but then it doesn't overpower the fucking music, which is how it should just be by default. But when I go back and play the older ones, you don't have that option at all.
Like the Dreamcast ones.
Yeah, so I replayed Sonic Adventure 2 recently, and like every time you pick up a ring, you can't hear the soundtrack. Like, you dig with like Knuckles or Rouge, you can't hear fucking soundtrack. Anytime you start like kicking or punching with Knuckles and Rouge, you can't hear fucking soundtrack. Anytime you do anything in the shooting levels where you have to use that annoying ass laser that makes a shitload of noise, you can't hear any of that. Those levels have great soundtracks. You never get to hear them. You never get to hear them at all. Just that's kind of, I don't know if that's exactly music, but it's like a music adjacent problem. They don't have the sound mixed properly to a point where it's like just you can't hear the music. And there's a lot of really good music in Sonic, but it's like it's very frustrating to not be able to hear it and the work that was put into it because the sound effects are so goddamn loud. I'll continue with my list of bad ones, and I'll let you go after, since we started with me ranting about Sonic. Story of Seasons and Harvest Moon and kind of Stardew Valley. I get really upset with these games sometimes. The big problem I have with those games is that they play one song for the entirety of a season. That gets really tedious to listen to because a season is not short. Stardew Valley, I feel like, is the least offensive because it has an okay-ish tune for spring, a great tune for summer, and then it has kind of an ambient sound for winter and autumn that kind of falls into the background and isn't really present enough for you to get annoyed at. Some of the older Harvest Moon games have really fucking annoying soundtracks. Like, once you hear them for the entirety of the season, by the end of it, you're just like so done with them. Some of the more modern Story of Seasons, I hear Miranda playing those like sometimes in the background, and I just get so irritated hearing the same just Shittown 3000 song playing for like 4 hours straight. I'm like, well, you turn that shit off. I don't want to listen to it anymore.
Yeah, I have to say that it's the same for Sarah. I think she had the season of stories or something, whatever that's called.
Story of
For
seasons, numbnuts. Other way
yeah,
around.
sorry. But yeah, no, she had that playing, and I'm just like, that soundtrack sounds so fucking annoying.
Yeah, if it was like catchier, it wouldn't suck as much. It'd still be really repetitive, but it just wouldn't be as bad. But when the soundtrack just sucks dick in the first place, it's just like not even like good or catchy. It's just really annoying to listen to for that amount of time. Despite the first Yoshi game, so like Super Mario World 2, I think was the first I think that was Yoshi's Island. That game has really good music. Every Yoshi game that has come after that has like baby ass bullshit music. I don't understand why Nintendo's done this. They had like one Yoshi game that was like a proper good game, and then every other Yoshi game that comes out just has like really obnoxious shit town music. I don't know what happened there. They just like decided that Yoshi is a baby's game, and then they had to like put obnoxious baby music in it. That I think that's insulting. I don't even think babies like listening to that garbage. So what is that?
I don't know. I do not know.
So that was kind of the. Oh wait, hold on. No, I got one more. Sorry, my list is kind of all over the place. Borderlands in general. I have 3 written down here, but fundamentally the problem is the same with all of them. There is no memorable tracks in the background of Borderlands, and it's an open world game. This is a problem that a lot of open world games I find have, where they have ambient music in the background, and that's nice, but also it kind of sucks because
wait. What about the credits in Borderlands 3? You're forgetting that iconic song.
don't they just use like a pop song for that?
Yes.
Well, that doesn't count. Oh, the fire one. Yeah, I hate that song for
I know.
I've explained that to you before. I'm not going to explain it on the podcast, but that song is a piece of shit. I hate it. I have a reason for hating it. It largely goes into hearing it too many times played at a workplace at one point in my life.
And you're saying it
Yeah, well,
anyways.
that's the short version of it instead of hour long of me complaining about I can't even remember his name.
He's not lying. He's not lying, folks. It went for a good 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, so like Borderlands in general as a series, and this is a problem that I find other open world games have. They don't have a lot of iconic music. They use a lot of kind of ambient noise in the background, which is like fine-ish, but then you don't have any of those like really iconic, memorable moments. You can't hear like a part of the soundtrack, and then in your mind you picture that part of the game, right? Because there's just none of the music punctuates the experience in a way that allows you to remember back to that point of a particular point in the game or a part of the story, which I personally I don't like that as much as when I can remember the soundtracks. That might just be because I grew up on Nintendo stuff, and the soundtracks in those games are usually good, as I said before.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I played Borderlands in September, and I really don't remember any tracks from it. So I can kind of agree.
There's like one track, and it's the one that gets played when you enter the desert in Borderlands 2, and that like vaguely sounds like a bit of the background music from the first game. It's like very twangy guitars, and that's the one point where I was like, oh yeah, this reminds me of, I can't remember the name of the area, but it reminded me of that area because like they use that same kind of the same kind of theme in both areas because it's supposed to be like the same place. But other than that, a lot of the time I was running around that game, it's like I can't remember anything. And if you played the soundtrack for me and didn't tell me it was from Borderlands, I probably wouldn't even recognize it. I couldn't place it.
Do you think that's to not take away from like the gun shooting, which is kind of like the main focus?
I never really thought about that, but I don't know that it would. I feel like the reason they do that is so that they don't have to put the work in to make really good music that you could listen to for 40 or 50 hours. It's just easier to have ambient noise in the background that's there so that you're not listening to pure silence, but that you hear it enough to know that something is happening, but it's not present enough for you to get annoyed with it. It just sort of hums in the background. It's like white noise, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's how they utilize the music a lot in like a lot of open world games, which I guess that kind of is what it is. Even Nintendo did that with Breath of the Wild, and I know some people were actually very critical of the fact that they did that because like Zelda has a lot of kick-ass music in its library across its multitude of games. So the fact that they had like this very quiet piano piece playing the entire time throughout the game was not. It took away from the experience. You didn't have those personalized dungeon themes or different themes for different areas. It's just this, like that nice light piano.
But I mean, that's partially because of the shift in like tone to like the open. Well, I guess actually that's a good point because open world games, I guess, kind of don't do music all that well.
So those are my bats. What about you? Obviously we kind of agree on Sonic. I don't know if we agree for the exact same reasons, but
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's more about it's very hit or miss with some of the soundtracks. Like you said, like it's to the point where it's so bad it's good. Regarding other bad soundtracks, I surprisingly kind of don't remember all that many. I just remember that Sonic was kind of that weird one.
live
Um
and learn, hanging on to the edge of tomorrow.
yeah, it's a classic.
It is a
Maybe
classic because
that's
it's terrible. It's awesome.
Yeah, maybe it's because I play so many Japanese games that I just don't really recall.
Yeah, I spent a very long time looking through my Steam library trying to specifically remember like if I could close my eyes and picture like listen to the soundtrack in my head and picture the game for good or for bad reasons, then I kind of made a jot note of it down on my notepad here.
I think anything that like plays the same tune after like 10 seconds can go to hell, like those Harvest Moonlight games.
I will say, I thought Animal Crossing, the newest one, New Horizons, I thought that it had a pretty shitty soundtrack overall. I really like the older Animal Crossing games, even though they have like there's like the synthesized drum where they're using like a drum machine for stuff. But I really like those older soundtracks. I found them they were a lot more catchy, and I felt like they didn't have like the soundtracks weren't as catchy in the new game as they were in the older games. Like I still even listen to the soundtracks from the older games while I'm doing writing because they're just like they're very catchy, they're very fun to listen to. Yeah, and I feel like the stuff they had in the new game was not even remotely up to par compared to what they had in the older ones.
Yeah, you know what? Thinking back though, I think Pokemon music has kind of just gotten worse over time though. Like at the beginning it was very iconic, but I think with the remixes to the tracks and stuff like that, it's not working anymore.
I am not 100% sure on that because of sound theory. The old games were 8-bit games and they had 3 or 6 sound channels for their music. The human brain has a much easier time remembering things that are simple. So when you're listening to music, if it has less complexity to it, it's a lot easier for you to remember it. So if like you hear Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, everyone knows what that motherfucking song sounds like because it's very simple. It's 3 notes
Hmm.
played in like a pattern. The soundtracks from the older Pokemon games only have 3 sound channels. So they're very catchy. They're very iconic because they had to be, otherwise they would sound like nothing. Whereas in the newer games, they have, like unlimited sound channels. I don't actually know how many they have in the newer games, but they have much more than 3. So the soundtracks are more complex, and because they're more complex, they're less memorable.
I didn't think about it that way.
But yeah, you
Um,
could always say that they're kind of dog shit if you want to. But that's kind of always where I stood on that. But yeah, I agree that I like the older stuff better. But I think it's more because it's easier for me to remember it.
Yeah, I'm not saying like they're bad. It's like I can still kind of tell when I'm playing a Pokemon game. Like, yeah, this is a Pokemon track, but sometimes it's meh.
I really liked you've played the Generation 8 games, right?
I got about halfway through.
Okay, so you've played enough of them to know what I'm about to say. I really like the gym leader track in Sword and Shield. I think
Yes,
it's one
yeah,
of the best gym leader tracks in a long time.
yeah. It really gets you hyped up, especially when they
Yeah,
go into
exactly.
the Dynamaxing. Like it kind of like almost like the audience is like getting involved with it
Yeah.
in the stadium.
I really liked that whole dichotomy of the boss fight and like how the theme tune worked for it. I thought that was really good instead of like having instead of it being like an advanced version of the battle tune, which is usually what it is. It actually felt like something different, right? And it felt like something that was like, oh shit, yeah, I can actually I can think of what that tune actually is in my head, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is like the best fucking soundtrack. That's the best single track in the entire game.
Yeah, no. Now that you mention it, I do have like a little bit of a hum to it. Yeah, I'm not gonna try it, but
Yeah,
I know what you meant.
yeah, exactly. So I guess since you're struggling to do the bad, do you want to switch over to the good?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of briefly talked about some of the ones that I like Cuphead, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest. But one I would like to say is about Oxenfree, which is story-driven, like kind of narrative. But the music in that one is really adds an extra like layer, and it's like it's an indie game. Yeah, it just makes that game go to a whole nother level in terms of like the quality and like the replayability because it's probably about a maybe 4 to 5 hour game, but just the soundtrack makes like everything like kind of spooky or eerie in some regards, like lighthearted in others. But for the most part, it's
I
really
feel
adds to
like
the game.
a lot of indie games, kind of like older games, have to rely really heavily on music because they don't have the really crisp visuals or the
Hmm.
necessarily the technical budget to sell exactly what mood they're going for. So they have to rely on having the music help set the stage. Brings me to the first thing I have written down here, Shovel Knight, which is an indie game, and it's designed as a faux NES game. And yeah, that's like a perfect example of that. They use that, pixel art. I like pixel art, but like pixel art can only tell so much of a story. So you have to rely on having a really good soundtrack to help sell the other half of that story. So when you're in the spooky castle, you got to have that spooky track going in the background to help convey the atmosphere and the mood of the place. Otherwise, you're just looking at like a bunch of blue pixels and you're like, what the fuck even is this? And I think that the music in Shovel Knight is a big part of why everyone loves that game, because the music is done by one of my favorite composers, Jake Kaufman. He is a fantastic musician. He does a great job on every game that he's made a soundtrack for. Yeah, Shovel Knight's soundtrack is like really 10 out of 10. I think it's better than the actual game. It's so good. Some other stuff I have written down. Another one is the games that Jake worked on, the Shantae games. I feel like a lot of the reason that people like those games is, one, anime titties. Two, the music is great. They are, by all accounts, they are pretty middling, mediocre platforming games, but the music in those games is fantastic. Like I said, Jake Kaufman, he's the guy who does the Shovel Knight soundtrack. He's done others. Shantae I think he's done all the Shantae games. I think he's done a lot of work with Way Forward. But yeah, those games have like a ton of bangers in them. Just like level after level after level of just really, really, really fantastic soundtracks. They sell the atmosphere. They're usually really catchy, very memorable. They make the levels feel way better to play than if you were just playing through them without that music there. Honestly. When I said that, you kind of nodded in agreement. Do you have anything else to add with the Shantae point?
Don't think I've ever played any of the Shantae games, but I have heard enough of the music where I know like the character and that it's like likely from that kind of a game. Yeah, it's decently iconic.
You can look this up later. But listeners, if you just take a brief pause, look up False Mermaids from Half Genie Hero and tell me that is not a total fucking earworm of a track. It is fantastic. And the level it goes with is kind of bullshit, but False Mermaids makes that level way more fun to play. Here's a surprise one, Kirby's Epic Yarn. That game sucks donkey ass. The music in that game is fantastic. I don't know why Nintendo ruined the music in the Woolly Yoshi, but Kirby's Epic Yarn has some of the best music I have ever heard in a Kirby game, period. It's got a lot of really, really great tracks. There's some upbeat ones. It's got some more subdued stuff. It's got a ton of great tracks. If you go listen to those ones by yourself on you, don't play the game. The game's not good. The game is not very good at all. But go listen to the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is great in that game. It's probably a big part of why I even enjoyed playing it at all, because when I went back and replayed it, I was like, wow, this game is not very fun. Valhalla, so that's spelled VA-11 space Hall-A. It's a visual novel where you serve alcohol to people, and the whole point of it is you're like the bartender, and then you're like listening to the stories of the different bar patrons as they come in day after day. It's a pretty fun game. I think a big reason why that game is so successful, or I enjoyed it so much rather, and why I think other people enjoyed it, is because the soundtrack is really good. It's got a great soundtrack that really sells the cyberpunk dystopian theme and atmosphere that the game is going for, and also kind of meshes in with the idea of that, like, you're in a pub right now. So some of the tracks are like, some of them are a little bit more upbeat, some of them are a little bit more subdued. And what's really amazing is when you just queue up a bunch of random music to have play in the background, because you do that, you queue up like music in a jukebox, and then it plays it throughout the entire night as you're serving customers and talking to them.
Oh, so that's neat. So you get like actually kind of a bit of more of a player choice
Yeah.
driven soundtrack.
What's really neat with that is you can place a bunch of stuff in there, not know what any of it sounds like, and occasionally you can have a song sync up really perfectly with what's happening like what the conversation's happening at that moment. I almost feel like the game would have been better suited if they'd actually chosen what music comes up in certain areas, specifically so that they could make those moments happen consistently. But it was still really special when a soundtrack that was very well suited for what was happening came up. But I think that might be owed more to the fact that the soundtrack in general captures the theme of a cyberpunk dystopia really, really, really well. It's a very good soundtrack to listen to either on its own or with the context of the game. Game comes highly recommended as well. It's great. And then the last two things I have on here, these are the two big ones. Hollow Knight has one of the best soundtracks in a game I have ever heard. I think it's a big part of what makes that game so amazing. The atmosphere in that game is sold half through the music and half through the gameplay. You have areas where it's a lot more gentle and bouncy, and in these areas there's a lot less stuff that's immediately trying to kill you. You feel safe because you are safe. The game's not being oppressive, and you have these like the music's gentle, it's calm. It allows you to take a break, a much needed one, because there's other parts of the game that are just a total asshole. They have much more evil, oppressive tones to them. They're more aggressive. But then so are the enemies, so everything matches like perfectly. The music is perfectly in sync with this game, and I think it does a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to actually selling the tone and the environment of the different areas. You go in a Deep Nest when they're just playing like ambient stuff in the background, and you can hear screeching, and it's all dark and shit. You tell me that place is not evil as hell? You can't, because it is. All comes down to really great sound design. Plus, you have a bunch of different boss themes, all of which help to capture the unique flair of the individual bosses you're fighting. So yeah, Hollow Knight's a great game. I feel like the use of string instruments is also a huge advantage in that game, specifically because it helps give it a more kind of like FromSoft games, Dark Souls and Bloodborne. They have like that really gothic aesthetic. Hollow Knight kind of copies that, so it also has a lot of string instrumentation pieces, and similarly feels like it has that kind of like that gothic aesthetic to it, which goes really well with the more dreary, dark, oppressive mood of the game. Have you played Hollow Knight?
Yes.
Do you agree with what I just said?
I do.
Okay.
To your point, I think it's heavily inspired maybe by the Dark Souls.
I feel like Hollow Knight copied more of Dark Souls homework, or like FromSoft's homework, than it did Nintendo's with like Metroid, honestly.
Yeah, it's a good blend of the two genres.
I don't really consider FromSoft games their own genres. I consider them very oppressive Metroidvanias, because in a lot of cases that's what they are.
Well, I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think they're kind of more. I mean, they're
more
more
action RPG.
Yeah, action RPG oriented. With
I guess it kind of depends on how the map is laid out. Because I know like the original Dark Souls, like the map for that feels very Metroid to me.
Okay, I could. Yeah, as someone who's played the first like third of Dark Souls 1, I could see that. I'm trying to think with Bloodborne, because that's the one I've actually played.
They open up a lot of shortcuts in that game, but I don't know if they're like big shortcuts or if they're just like
they're
loop around and you have the bonfire again kind of thing.
No, they're decently good shortcuts to the point where it's in order to get like through the. I think it takes about, I don't know, maybe like this is as an amateur, I'd say like 20 to 30 minutes, and then you can finally kind of open up the gate, and then that'll shave off a ton of time.
You don't have to specify that you're an amateur. Do you really think the Dark Souls speedrunners are listening to this podcast?
No.
Exactly.
They're all playing Demon Souls right now.
If they got PS5s, yes. And then they're going to bitch about it online because it's different.
I can't do this speed hack anymore.
Yeah. And then I'm sure you can guess what the last game, well, I guess not really game, but like game company I'm going to mention.
No, I can't.
Oh, it's Supergiant.
Oh.
See,
right.
it was obvious, right? I said it before. I'm going to say it now. Supergiant Games consistently puts out really good music with their games. In a lot of cases, the music in their games is the best part. I think with Pyre and Hades, the game is equally as good, but with Transistor and with Bastion, I believe that the soundtrack is probably better than the games that they're accompanying. They do a really good job. I guess Darren Korb does a really good job of writing a soundtrack for each of the games that captures the unique aesthetic, atmosphere, and environment, as well as the tones and themes of the story within those games. And what's really cool is that each time a new game comes out, he's not afraid to like experiment and do something a little bit different for usually better effect. One of the really cool things I liked with Pyre in particular is in that game, there's a bunch of different teams who you're facing off against, and each of them have their own theme song. I feel like the theme songs did a really good job of selling you, like telling you immediately. It's like as soon as you hear the theme tune, you don't even need to read the dialogue for the team that you just met. You know exactly what this team is about. So like one of the tracks is called Thrash Pack, and it's for this like really scraggly looking team of these like dogmen guys, and they look all like beaten up and chewed out, and they got like kind of a punk looking aesthetic. And that song it's got like kind of a metal like a metal undercurrent to it, a bit kind of like a loud punchy like punky kind of guitar to it, and you're like, okay, I know that these guys like they're the kind of guys that'll stab you in the back and then steal your kidney in a back alleyway and then run off with it and sell it in the black market. That's what these kind of guys are like. And that's exactly what those guys are like. Meanwhile, there's another one called Knights of the Sea. When you meet that team, they have like a really kind of like honorable sound and like trumpets and shit. When you meet them, it's like, okay, these are guys who like they value like chivalry and honor and a bunch of dumb bullshit. And then when you actually like fight them, you see like they won't do any like kind of underhanded shit or like try to win. They'll try to win with like honorable stuff instead of devolving into like degenerate stuff. And then like I did like a completely different theme song is Skydance. That's the theme song that the Harpy team has. It's got like a very nimble tempo, which immediately sets you up for like, okay, these guys are like, they're like not fucking around, right? Like some of the teams, they're a little bit more slow paced. The Harpies, they are not slow paced. They will stomp your shit in if you do not fight back against them. They are easily the hardest team in the game to fight against. And I feel like their theme tune really captures, like it's got like a really nimble tempo as you meet them. And then like when you're fighting them in the match, it plays that same theme tune. And it's like, okay, this is the theme tune of what is the hardest team to fight in the entire game. And I think that it reflects that really, really well by having that really quick tempo to it. And then like Hades, that's a game where you're running through hell. It has a very metal aesthetic to it, which is commonly associated with hell, but I don't have a problem with that. There's tons of guitars in it. I really like the soundtrack. Mostly because I'm a big fan of string instruments. Obviously, I'm a big fan of string instruments. I spent a bunch of time talking about Hollow Knight, and that's full of string instruments. But yeah, it's just like I feel like every single time Supergiant releases a new game, Darren Korb just works his fucking magic and just captures the atmosphere of the characters and the place. Like every little detail is just reflected so well in the work that he does in the soundtracks. So like Supergiant games consistently blows my goddamn mind away with their soundtracks. So they're like the big one that like they've put up 4 games now where the soundtracks are amazing. So
Okay. Well, I don't
I
really
told
have
you I
any
had
more.
I told you I had lots of notes for this.
You had lots of notes for this. I was not nearly as prepared. I thought I had enough. Oh well.
Well, it is what it is. So but yeah, I wrote down an entire page of different notes for this. I feel like we just spent like fucking 40 minutes talking about that.
A decent amount of time. Okay, and with that, I think we're gonna move on to our next well, not really our next topic. It'll be the games we've played this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say we just spent a very long time talking about that. So just kind of as an aside before we fully transition. Thank you, Maz, for asking that question that fundamentally became the topic of basically the entire podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good question.
Yes, thank you. Always happy to get user questions.
All right, games we've been playing.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've been playing Pokemon Pearl.
I have nothing good to say about it. God damn, this game fucking sucks.
Let's
This is my fucking birthday present. Not like I'm like
let's tear this game a new
I'm like,
asshole.
yeah, I'm going to Sarah. I'm like, I wish you didn't buy this for me. This is not great. Oh well.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what do you dislike so much about Pokemon Pearl? Because I know what I dislike about Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, but I'll let you like. What do you dislike about Pokemon Diamond and Pearl?
So I think getting back to your point, like last week, with like how you said like Gen 3 was just felt like it was so slow. I think the pacing in this one's worse.
That's because it is.
Okay, well, here's the thing. When I started replaying this, other than your rival being annoying, and I know the rivals are typically always annoying, but like this one seems abnormally more annoying. I don't remember a single thing about this game, and I know I played the full game before. I think it was like Diamond, and I got to the Elite Four and everything and finished the game. I don't remember a single goddamn thing about this game, and that's really weird because I remember something about every game.
Hot take: Generation 4 is the worst generation of Pokemon. Specifically because Diamond and Pearl are absolutely terrible games. They have some interesting features, but they are so bad. Platinum fixes so many of the issues, and there's a lot of issues to fix. And Platinum fixes a ton of them. And whenever people like think about Generation 4, they always say, oh yeah, Platinum, because like Platinum's actually good. but Diamond and Pearl are actively like just complete dog shit. So as you said, the pacing is really bad, like really, really, really bad. You go to the first gym city and you get there pretty quickly, so that's not totally egregious. Then you have to go through very large amount of shit to get to the second boss, the second gym. There is kind of like an intermediary boss in between at the power plant, but there's like a huge amount of distance between the first gym and the second gym.
Yeah, I've gone to the boss you're talking about in the between. Yeah, the wind power plant or something like that.
Yeah. And then this is like the big, like, again, continuing like the really, really awkward pacing. You go to, oh boy, I don't remember the name. Is it like Heart Home City? Is that the name of it?
You know what? I've got it right here. Let me finish this battle and I can say what the
Oh,
name of the
you've been
counter.
playing it the entire time?
No, I've not been playing it the entire time. It's just in the room.
Let's see here. Pokey Earth here. Pokey Earth.
Okay, well you do it then. Right.
Cerebi.net.
I'm not playing
Sinnoh.
games in the middle of podcast. I'm doing that during work. I'm kidding. I'm not.
It is Heart Home City, or Hearth Home City, rather. No, Heart Home or Hearth Home, one or the other. There's no space between it, so it's kind of like one giant word. So it could be like Hearth Home or Heart Home. I'm not exactly sure how it's supposed to be said, but anyway,
To the anime.
yeah, I'm not going to do that.
All right.
You have to go down
Fair
like
enough.
one route that connects you to the first gym city, which you can't actually like get through that simplified route because you don't have a bicycle the first time you're there, so you can't actually get like take the
Yes,
quick way.
yeah.
You have to go the roundabout way to get to the second gym.
And you're like your rivals even says it like, oh, I can't get over there because of my bike. And I'm like, no one can give you a bike.
Yeah, you get a bike in the city where the second gym is.
Lovely.
So then you go down south from there. Then you go to the east. You hit Hearthhome City, and you're like, oh, there's a gym here. But you can't fight the gym then. That's actually the fifth gym. So then you leave. You go on another route, go to another city, then go on another route, then another route. Then you get to the third gym city. 4 or 5 routes and like 3 cities between the second gym and the third gym. In a Pokemon game, that is an absolutely enormous amount of time to go without doing any kind of meaningful boss fight. In any kind of RPG, that's an absolutely ridiculous amount of time to go between doing like a boss fight. And there's no like weird side villain shit in between there either. Like you beat the second gym, I think in that city you fight another one of the Team Plasma people, and then you do nothing for like 4 or 5 hours until you get to the third gym. And then you're finally able to fight the next boss in the game. There's just nothing to punctuate any of that time, and thus it feels like you're just doing fucking nothing for that big amount of time. And then like from there you go south and then you fight the fourth gym, and then you go like northwest and you fight the fifth gym, and then by that point you can fly, so you can fly back and get like really quickly get to the sixth gym. And then from there, then there's like a huge gap again before you hit the seventh gym, and then you fly back to hit the eighth gym. The first part of the game is really, really, really poorly paced, and then it's like boom, 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 and then it's back to being slowly paced again. It's like the pacing is all over the place in this game. It's super awkward. I know people have criticized the newer games for being like, oh, it's just like you go to a route, and then afterwards you fight a gym leader, and you go to the route, and you fight a gym leader. But the pacing in those games feels less shit. I think it's better that way because you regularly have your boss fights. And in a video, like an RPG, that makes sense. You like regularly fight bosses. That's a thing in an RPG. Pokemon is baby's first RPG. You have to regularly fight bosses for the game to have a good sense of pacing. That's a requirement. That's how pacing works. Because nothing about the gameplay meaningfully changes across the entire journey. So the only way to punctuate the entire journey is to put boss fights everywhere.
Yep.
The other thing that I feel contributes to a really bad sense of pacing, and I don't know if you notice this at all, and whenever I play Pokemon games, I try to swap out my team constantly. It usually solidifies towards like the end of, like really toward the end of the game, like the 7th or 8th gym leader. That's usually when I'll be like, all right, I got to stop switching stuff out of my team. Up until that point, I try to keep swapping my team members around constantly. In most Pokemon games, this is totally like a totally viable thing to do. There's enough variety of Pokemon that you're able to constantly switch in new members as you find them. Diamond and Pearl, that's not possible.
No, and that was actually going to be one of my points. The variety of Pokemon is like it's just a joke.
There's 150 Pokemon in that game, even though by that point in the series there was over 400 of the fucking things.
Yeah, and I mean, like, a lot of them are repeats. A lot of them are the older gen Pokemon, and like, I think, like, for the most part, like, the first like route has like new Pokemon, but after that, it just goes back to older shit. And
Yeah,
it's just like I spent like 4 hours, and I finally hit, because I like what I like to do is I always like to have a party of like brand new Pokemon.
okay.
not with the older gens, or if it's like one that I really like, then I'll keep it. But I usually like to keep like just newer Pokemon of that gen. But it wasn't possible for like the first 4 hours, and even with the new stuff, I only have like 5 Pokemon that I really want to keep a variety. I still, as you think you've mentioned this either on the side, like I don't have any fire Pokemon yet because they don't have that many. Yeah.
There's like 2 fire Pokemon in the entire game. One of them's a starter Pokemon. That's not me being facetious. That's actually the truth.
Which I picked the Turtwig.
Let me see here. Diamond and Pearl.
It's Chimchar.
DPP. No, that's not the right one. No, I know who the starter Pokemon is.
Okay.
There we go. So like if you didn't choose Chimchar, I am pretty sure the only other fire Pokemon in the region is Rapidash.
Oh, Ponytail Rapidash. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Ponytail Rapidash. And that is correct. That is the only other fire Pokemon.
Oh my fucking god, you gotta be kidding me.
And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. One of the Elite Four, who has like 4 or 5 Pokemon in his team, he is a fire type trainer. He has Rapidash and he has Infernape on his team. I don't remember what the other Pokemon on his team are, but it's like, why the hell did you put an Elite Four member as like a fire type user when there's only 2 fire types in this goddamn region? Let me see here. Have you done the Elite Four yet in the game?
Silliest question I've heard all day. No, I'm not even at the second gym.
Oh, okay. You're not even remotely far in the game.
No, I'm 4 hours in. That's all.
Okay, so here, check this out. Here's how Shittown 3000 the variety of Pokemon is in this region, right? So each of the Elite Four members has 5 Pokemon on their team, and the champion has a full team of 6. Pretty standard fare, not unusual. Aaron, the first guy, or I guess his name's just Aaron. Aaron's the first guy. He's a bug type trainer. He has a Dustox and a Beautifly on his team.
What?
These are joke-ass bug Pokemon that are front-loaded in any game they appear in because of how shitty their stats are. He has those as members of his team.
Oh boy.
Bertha is a ground-type user. She has 4 ground-type Pokemon on her team, and then 1 rock-type. She's got a Sudowoodo because I don't think there's actually enough ground Pokemon in the region for her to fill out a full team. I guess if they gave her Torterra, that would work as a 5th, but they didn't do that. Oh wait, no, if they gave her Steelix, that would work too. But they gave Steelix to Flint, the fire trainer, who has Rapidash, Infernape, and then he has Steelix because there's no more fire Pokemon, Lopunny because there's no more fire Pokemon, and Drifblim because there's no more fire Pokemon. But he's a fire type trainer. Don't let you be confused. He's a fire enthusiast. Fire Pokemon enthusiast. And then Lucian is a psychic trainer. He actually has a team of like half-decent psychic Pokemon. He's got Mr. Mime, Girafarig, Medicham, Alakazam, Bronzong. So mostly older generation Pokemon, but he does have Bronzong on there for some new representation. And then Cynthia is the only member of the Elite Four whose team's not like a just bojangly bullshit. I guess Bertha's team's not bad, and neither is Lucian's. And she's got Spiritomb, Garchomp, Gastrodon, which I guess was a ground Pokemon, but they couldn't use it on Bertha's team because they gave it to Cynthia, Milotic, Roserade, and Lucario. And this is why Platinum is so much better. Platinum took this decrepit Pokedex of 150 Pokemon and expanded it out to like 250 Pokemon, vastly improving the variety of Pokemon available in this region. The amount of Pokemon available in this game is in Diamond and Pearl is a fucking joke. And like, not a good joke. It's a bad joke.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I mean, like,
it dramatically hurts. Like, just in a game about collecting cool critters, it dramatically hurts the game when there's so few available for you, like so few options for you to collect.
Yeah, and I think that's why, as much as it's kind of sucked that Shield you couldn't get everything, like 400 was plenty.
Sword and Shield is a better game
than Gen 4, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. What did I say in Discord? I said it in earlier. I haven't played Gen 7, so I left it out of the rankings, but I would put...
You put Gen 8 like in the middle.
Yeah, where did I put everything? I said Gen 2 is the best, then Gen 5, then Gen 1, then Gen 8, then 6, then 3, then 4. 4, I think, is the absolute... Like, I like Platinum a lot, but, like, Platinum fixing everything is an obvious, like, consequence of the fact that it came out, like, 2 years later. So, like, obviously, you're going to fix all of, like, the shitty stuff that was wrong, like, just not very good about Diamond and Pearl with the third game. That's, like, that's not an excuse for the way that, the Diamond and Pearl were released. Those games were just... I don't know what the hell, like... I swear to God, Game Freak, they were smoking crack when they made Gen 3, and they were just like, they were just on like meth or something when they were making Gen 4. Gen 4 is actually like terrible.
No, they were in withdrawal.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, like Platinum is a significantly better game, and it's only a significantly better game because it had so much room to improve because Diamond and Pearl just are not very good. Those are my two big issues with the game. I kind of went over them and somewhat monopolized this. But do you have anything else that you were pissed off about?
Within my first 4 hours, yeah. What the fuck is wrong with the accuracy in this game? And the critical hits are just ridiculous. My God, I lost to like the first guy mostly because I thought with like a level 9 Turtwig I'd be fine, but I guess his agility's pretty shit, and he missed a tackle 3 fucking times in a row. Which there's only a 5% chance that you miss. Other Pokemon did not use any like status changing abilities, so I experienced a 0.0125% chance of that occurring. That's less than the chance of getting a shiny. So what the fuck?
Where my shiny at, game?
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck? So the early game in this is not nearly as fun as it is like in Ultra Moon and Pokemon Shield, and to a certain extent, the remake of Gen 3.
Yeah, well, you can only catch like I want to say maybe like not even 10 different varieties of Pokemon for the first several hours of the game.
Yeah, it's very minimal. Like I finally found a water Pokemon. It was Psyduck, and then I found Beelz. No, Buizel. Or something like
Weasel?
that. Yeah, Buizel.
It's like
No.
Bowie and Weasel.
Yeah. See, I don't remember like any of these Pokemon until I see them finally.
I feel like Gen 4 had a lot of really not great designs as well. That's like a personal preference thing though. So yeah, you haven't even gotten to the big stretch of the game where you're not gonna even be able to allowed to do anything for a while either.
I think based off your description, I'm about in the first third of that, I'd say.
Yeah, so are you even gonna go back and finish it, or are you just gonna like, no, I'm not doing this?
We'll see.
I feel like that's a way of you not saying that you're not going to play it.
I don't know. I haven't even finished either of the other gens. I just kind of wanted to play what was technically going to be my birthday present. Anyway, so yeah, I played that, and I played a bit of Trine 4, The Nightmare Prince.
So are you playing that with Sarah, or are you just playing it alone?
No, I'm playing that alone.
Okay.
Though it is nice that it's you can do co-op with it. Yeah, it's nice little like kind of light physics based gameplay with its puzzle oriented. This one's got a bit more of light RPG light RPG mechanics with kind of a piss poor upgrade tree. It's really very linear.
Okay.
Not really sure what the real point of that is, other than oh, this guy gets the lightning sword, or this one gets like slightly better bow. It's more for the light combat portions of the game where you're going to be
Is
like
it
fighting.
is it so linear to the point where you can't make decisions?
Yeah, so far there's no real decision making.
So would you maybe say it'd be better if it just when the game decides it's the appropriate time for you to have an ability, they should have just given it to you instead of having you go through a skill tree?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that the abilities are kind of tied to you getting these collectible experiences. So, like, throughout the levels, there'll just be kind of like, like your typical platformer, like, oh, get the money or get the star or whatever. And then you use those to basically buy the upgrades.
So if you're already a good player at the game, you get rewarded with stuff you don't need so you can continue to destroy the game.
Yeah.
You can kind of see where I'm going with that.
No, I know I'm getting I get what you mean. But honestly, it's just a nice little game to kind of relaxing. The combat's like nothing, and if you die, then you just restart at the combat section. You're not punished at all in this game.
I mean, sometimes you just want to play a game and be a total G. So
Oh yeah, no, it's a nice little break from the norm. I definitely recommend it for anyone who just kind of wants some lighter experience like that. And you really don't need to have played the other Trine games. Sure, they'll mention, oh, these are the heroes of Trine from 3, 2, and 1. You really don't need to play them. If you really care about the story, play them all. But as someone who's only really played 3, I didn't find it was necessary to do that to enjoy the game. Yeah.
I would estimate that from what I know of the Trine games, I don't necessarily believe that people get a lot of benefit out of the story in those games.
No, not really. It's there just to kind of move the platforming segments along, which
Mhm.
are good because a lot of the puzzles are a bit more physics based, or shine this light into this thing, but you're gonna have to use the wizard to either create a box that you can use that as kind of like a stepping stone, or that you need that for this part of the puzzle, whether that's to block something from not moving, or use that to be able to stand on it in order to shine the light into a mirror to reflect back into something else. But yeah, it's nice and casual. If there is for the difficulty, there's easier, normal, but then there's a nice little like hint timer where if you're struggling at some point, it's got like it's defaulted to like 6 minutes, but I think you can go less.
Okay, that's interesting. You can actually queue
I
up
thought
like when you want the hints.
yeah, it's neat because then you like, oh, I'm struggling a lot with this. You can turn it up, or if you're just not good at kind of puzzle games, but you want to play something kind of casually, then yeah, you have that ability, which I kind of think is neat. Kind of like how the Tomb Raider game had the
Oh yeah, where you could just like turn off, or you could turn up the frequency of the hints it gave you in the Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that kind of style. Other than that, not a whole lot. Kind of been busy.
I had last week off, so I played lots of things. And by that I mean I put a lot of time into games that I've already talked about a lot, and then put very little time into a
Lies.
bunch of new games.
He's lying to us.
So I played through the entirety of a game called Lucifer Within Us. And it's a neat game. It's one of the ones that I picked up during the Steam Autumn Game Fest thing that I wrote about. So I actually played it fully. The first case in that game was the demo, and it only had 2 other cases in it. The 2 other cases were more involved, but I was not necessarily expecting it to be such a short experience. That said, I still prefer games that are short and meaningful than long and make me want to die inside. I don't know if it was worth the 20. Like, I feel like some people would be like, "Oh, it wasn't worth like the $20," but I thought it was fine and not like good enough for it. It's not an exceptional experience. It is pretty fun. So the idea with that is it's like a detective-y type of game where you show up and like a murder happened and you have to figure out what, like, you get an account of the events from all of the suspects, so you get like with their alibis, and then you kind of collect the clues from the area, and you're like, okay, well, based on what you said, that contradicts with what this person said, and this person said something, but like someone saw them, so that means they corroborated what their part of the statement is, which means that your statement is a lie. And then you like present that like, oh, this person's like thing is corroborated, so like that means that your thing's a lie. And then by presenting that, then they're like, oh, you caught me, and then they tell you what the truth is. Or you present a piece of evidence. It's like, but I found this piece of evidence that you said you had on you at this point, and it's like in this completely different spot. How did it get there then? And they're like, I think that's induction rather than deduction, but it's a game about detectiving. Like, there's an overarching story, and the story kind of ends like, I would say, in a very unsatisfying way. It's
Is it like kind of sequel baity or?
yeah, that's kind of it. It like builds to a crescendo, and the crescendo kind of doesn't really resolve that. Like it's building towards something, and then like there's something happens, and that's kind of like where the story ends, instead of any kind of meaningful resolution happening.
And this is like a full release. It's not like early access.
Yeah, no, this is a full release.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, I can see why I like the short length, and then like the way it ends would really piss some people off. I thought it was fun enough. I'd love to see other games use a similar framework, because I thought what was there was really, really well put together. It's just that it kind of ends like, oh, that's kind of, I could see why that would leave a bit of a sour taste in some people's mouths. In a similar vein, Raji, an Ancient Epic, that's another one that I played during the autumn. Whatchamahoozit. That game also ends in a very kind of like, wait, what the fuck? It's like kind of like there's room for a sequel there, but also, why didn't the story finish? So you spend like the entire time trying to like save your brother, and then you save him, which is good, but then it's like, oh, but the quest is bigger than just saving your brother. Like the demon guy is going to open a world to the Devas and then take over the land of the Devas and get like become all powerful and shit. And I guess like spoiler for Raji, I guess I should say spoiler for both of those games. You like stop him, but then he's like, aha, I got in anyway. And then the credits roll. And it's like, what the fuck? And it's like, that's how the game ends. I didn't do anything wrong. That's just how the game ends. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's like 4.5 hours long. The parkour combat's neat. It's just as long as it can get away with being. I really liked how it told different stories about and had like enemies and combat inspired by Indian myths and stories, which I don't know if there's other games that I don't see that have them, but personally I haven't seen a lot of games cover that sort of material. I feel like ancient Greece and ancient Norse get covered a lot, and then like other kinds of like ancient civilizations that have been around since forever get covered like not really a whole lot. Or like the Crusades are popular, and then like Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is not historically accurate, but it's like based on historical stuff, like the Shogun Wars and shit in like China. Or I guess not the Shogun Wars. People are gonna get angry at me. I don't know enough about history, but like those are kind of like the big four things that a lot of games are based on. And then like so, like, it was really refreshing to play this and have it be like ancient Indian myths. And then like the only other thing that I played that was new, I know it was a pretty kind of like middling kind of reviews, but the other thing I played is a game called Maize, and it's about exploring a corn maze filled with sentient corn.
Oh, okay.
It's a really stupid
What?
game, like a supremely stupid game. I got that as part of a game swap with my blogger friend Kim from Later Levels and her husband Pete. I gave them Valhalla and they gave me Maze. They also gave me Paradigm. I haven't played that yet, but Maze was the one I had to play as part of the game swap. It was fun. It was like fun, stupid. It took me a little bit because it's like an adventure game. And once I kind of figured out what the game was on about, I got on with it a lot better. But like when I started off, I'm like, wow, I don't understand at all what this game like wants me to do. I think the moment where it kind of like clicked, I tried all of the items I had on like everything, and that's how I was like solving the puzzles, which is not how you're supposed to solve the puzzles. You're actually supposed to like think about them instead of just like randomly smashing the items together until something works. I found like a pair of nail clippers, and I was like, oh hey, I'm gonna go use these on that like outhouse and see if it gets the nail out of the outhouse, and it did, and I'm like, this is stupid. Okay, this game is just gonna use like dumb like bullshit moon logic for everything. So then there was like, I'm like, I'm going to take this nail back and I'm going to use it to fix the broken breaker in the house because it conducts electricity. And that's probably what it wants me to do. And sure as shit is stinky, that is exactly what you had to do to move on to like the next set of puzzles. And I'm like, all right. It's like one point where you get like a mangled key fob and you have to like put it on a desk and then use a hammer on it to make it flat again so it works. I'm like, yeah, like this. Or
What?
yeah, that's what these puzzles are like.
Oh my.
So like there's sentient corn, and one of them just keeps fucking with you. To get him to stop fucking with you, you have to like use glue, and you glue the control panel that he's using to fuck with you, and then you put a picture of this like it's like a framed picture of a popcorn brand where it's got like a kernel looking guy on it, and you like glue that to the controls, and then when he comes in to fuck with you again, he sees that, he goes, it's the guy who eats us, and he like runs out of the room screaming.
Uh,
It's a really stupid game.
At least it doesn't sound like it's to the point where it's like, imagine what oh no. Oh.
The developers are from Ontario.
That's cool.
I only know that because they had a credit, like part of the credit sequence was for the Ontario Art Fund.
Right. Yeah.
You can use that to help subsidize games if the majority of your development team is located in Ontario. Pro tip, developers out there. But yeah, and Maze is pretty. So like the ending. I guess I don't want to spoil the ending, but it's equally as dumb as the rest of the game. And you also spend half the game walking around with a cybernetic Russian teddy bear that helps you do things.
I see.
I don't know if I'd recommend it, but it's like a dumb kind of fun game to play. I didn't dislike it, is the thing. I had fun playing it, like more fun than I had playing. It's just like simple and silly, and because of that, you could just have fun playing it instead of like, you know, where I normally play games where I'm very like try hard. I like a lot of stuff I play. So it was just nice to like sit back and just spend like 3 hours playing this like really silly game where a bunch of corns were like talking at me and solving these like dumbass riddles, and there's like an evil corn, and it's like, oh god, it was a silly game. The only thing I thought was kind of shit was there's one point where I needed to get a fingerprint. I found a keyboard and it's covered in fingerprints. I'm like, all right, I need a piece of tape. Based on all the logic in this game, I need a piece of tape because you like that's a thing you can do in real life. If you take a piece of tape and you put it on something that has a fingerprint, you can get the fingerprint from that, and you can use it on like, or at least you used to be able to use it on Apple phones, and you could fake the Touch ID with that because they were so bad at reading fingerprint scanners. They wouldn't recognize it was a piece of tape. I could not for the life of me. I spent like 10 minutes trying to find this fucking piece of tape in this area. At least I was closed into the area, so I knew I wasn't like, I only had this like select space to search for the tape. the tape ended up being under a document. So there's like tons of documents you could pick up for like lore stuff. Most of them were just like silly jokes, but I picked up one and like consistently when you pick them up, there's like nothing underneath them, but the piece of tape was underneath this one document. I didn't notice it because it was on a whiteboard. So I like picked up the document and then like did not see the tape and then just moved on. And it wasn't until I was like scouring every inch of every room that I noticed the piece of tape like on the whiteboard, which I could barely see. And I was like, oh, you fucking piece of shit game. So that was like the only part of the game where I was like very frustrated for what I think was kind of unreasonable, just by virtue of the fact that they hid an item behind another item. I thought that was kind of shitty, specifically because no other part in the game did that. The items you needed to find were just kind of like laying around in rooms, like kind of out in the open, which made them very easy to find. And then it was like, okay, I've got the items now. I just need to figure out how to use them instead of spending like 10 minutes trying to find the fucking piece of tape on the board. Doesn't help that it was like see-through tape either.
Oh dear.
So you could like kind of see it, but like I had a really hard time seeing. I don't know if I'm just like blind. I'm probably just blind, but I had a really hard time seeing it. I think it would have been easier to see if it was like masking tape or like painter's tape. Painter's tape would have been, I mean, it might not have made as much sense, but like I think painter's tape would have stood out a lot more because like painter's tape is green. So it would have stood out really well against the whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, the only other two things I've been playing, I spent quite a bit of time playing some more Slay the Spire. And some more Hades. I'm sure that surprises nobody. I ended up getting up to Ascension 13 on the Silent with Slay the Spire, which is, I'm almost at the point where I think Ascension 15 is where the game becomes a little bit more RNG heavy. I'm doing pretty good that way. That is way further into the game's difficulty spectrum than I thought I would ever get. When I was first playing it, I didn't even like, I think I only played through like one Ascension run before I even reviewed the game way back when. I feel like my review of the game somewhat doesn't reflect how much I enjoy the game because the Ascension difficulty is where I've spent, like the Ascension levels and the difficulty that comes with that is how I've spent most of my time playing the game and continuing to get better at it. Really, really big fan of having like a non-linear, kind of a granular difficulty curve. I've written about that before. And then in Hades, I'm basically doing the same thing. After getting 100% of the achievements, I felt really burned out because some of them were not very fun to get. But I have them all now, so I can just focus on playing the game. So I took about a month break, and then I hopped back into playing it. With that, I got a 32 heat run, which got me the last of the in-game statues. They don't have an achievement for that. I think it's because of how hard it was to do that run. They didn't want to piss off the Platinum Hunters when this game inevitably ends up on PlayStation. 32 heat is very interesting because you have to put on various difficulty modifiers that are not hard to deal with on their own. But when they stack together, they have like the difficulty goes up multiplicatively.
Right.
So, and a really interesting bit about that was kind of with the weapon I'm the most comfortable with. So using the Chiron version of the bow, which has like a homing special attack, figuring out which specific modifiers I could even get away with using was very important for that. That particular bow's really, really, really bad at dealing with lots of smaller mobs. It just can't deal with them very well because it primarily locks onto a single target and then nukes that target. So if there's a bunch of really small mobs, they don't need a lot of hits, but you can't necessarily kill them as quickly as you would like, which then interferes with the time limit related difficulty things where you have like a certain amount of time that you need to beat each of the different zones in. That lended itself to having some like very unique challenges where it's like, okay, what sorts of like what modifiers can I like what modifiers should I put on and what are the drawbacks of them? So it took me some experimenting there to find something that ended up working. I gave everything a bonus 100% attack damage because the bow's really safe to use. So I didn't get hit a whole lot. And that meant that like them having increased attack wasn't as big of a deal for me. Because yeah, the Chiron bow is very, very good at doing lots of damage from far away. So very safe weapon to use. And then just in general, I've been trying to use a lot more of the other weapons to increase my understanding of them and continue to just dick around with different difficulty modifiers to figure like just to make things fun. So I'm like messing around with different weapons and then figuring out what works best with those. And then also just kind of tooling around with the different difficulty modifiers and getting more used to some of them than I was, because I feel like I kind of jumped into the deep end of 30 like with the 32 heat very prematurely. So that ended up, I feel like it was a little more difficult than it would have been if I was more practiced with some of the modifiers I was using. That has also confirmed definitively that this game is going to be my game of the year. Spoilers for the podcast that we're going to end up recording three podcasts from now.
Yeah, roughly that, yeah.
We'll be doing our year-end one where we talk about our favorite games of the year. And Hades is 100% going to be mine. I wasn't 100% sure that it was, especially with the achievement hunting. I felt like I was just kind of being motivated to play it more because of the achievements rather than because it was rewarding and fun in itself to play. But after sinking it almost another 40 hours into it over the past week and a bit, I realized that, yeah, I actually do like this game a lot. It's a good game. You should play it.
Well, you've been getting certain people more interested in it on Twitter.
Yeah, I keep telling people to play good games, and people are actually believing me now. So that's good. I'm convincing people to play things. Although I don't think it's just me alone. I think everyone and their brother was saying Hades was good, which has the unfortunate downside of, sometimes it makes people not want to play something because they're like, oh, well, I'm tired of hearing about it. It has the inverse effect, but Hades is actually, sorry, I'm just scrolling through Twitter. I got to show you this. Hades is actually worth your time. This is what I was looking at. Look at how chubby that little fucker is. For those who are listening, I found a tweet with a very, very chubby Spyro.
Yeah, it looks like Spyro Chungus.
It's a big Chungus Spyro.
Oh, that's what it says in the description.
Wait, is that what it says? Spyro, a chunky little Chungus. Oh, that's it for me. I think that might be it for us.
Yeah, that's it for our show for this week. Thanks for everyone for listening. If you want, go follow us on Twitter at the Frosty Canucks, and you can find me at Javm Animation. That's JAVM Animation on Twitter. And Frosty, I know you want to shout out your stuff.
So I am Frosty Light on, I'm not going to say on everything, but I'm Frosty Light on a lot of things. I have, well, I don't know if there's somebody who's used my name on some fucking a thing that I'm not even aware of. But so you can follow me on Twitter at FrostyLight. You can read my blog, which is frostylight.ca. I have some real cool articles over there. This past week, I released an article about if there is value in a game, you cannot win. And that I had a lot of fun writing. And I think it starts some interesting discussion about games that have unwinnable states because of the way they're designed and the procedural generation that goes into them, and whether or not that makes them good or bad as games. Do to clarify it in the article, but that should not be conflated with games that you don't win. It's games that you can't win, and there's a difference, which I talk about in the article. And then I stream over on Twitch, twitch.tv/FrostyLight every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern time until Twitch bans me because of their incompetence. I think that's everything.
Well, that's every platform.
Yeah, Twitter, WordPress, and Twitch.
Well, thanks everyone for listening, and above all, stay frosty.